Well, g'day curd nerds. Today we're making CamBlue. Or Campenzola, or well, I think that's about it. This cheese is quite unique. It's a combination of Camembert and a blue cheese. So you actually make the blue cheese part first and then spray the Penicillium Candidum and Geotrichum Candidum all over the surface of the cheese and let that grow as a secondary mould growth. So very interesting process. So let's get on and see how we made CamBlue. So I'm using Inglenook Dairy's unhomogenized milk for this cheese. The ingredients are 8 litres or 8.45 quarts of whole cow's milk. I'm using unhomogenized, as I just mentioned. 350 millilitres or 12 fluid ounces of heavy cream, which is about 35% fat content. A quarter of a teaspoon of Flora Danica Aromatic Mesophilic starter culture. 1/32 of a teaspoon of Penicillium Roqueforti mild. A quarter of a teaspoon or 1.25 mils of calcium chloride diluted in quarter of a cup of non-chlorinated water. Quarter of a teaspoon or 1.25 millilitres of liquid rennet diluted in quarter of a cup of non-chlorinated water. 1/8 of a teaspoon of Penicillium Candidum and 1/32 of a teaspoon of Geotrichum Candidum and some non-iodised salt. Sea salt is okay for this recipe. So I've got the thermometer in there. Bring the heat up to 32 degrees Celsius, 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So take all your utensils out, and then we're going to be adding in the starter culture. So sprinkle the Flora Danica over the top. And allow that to rehydrate for 5 minutes. So after 5 minutes, we're going to stir the culture into the milk. Now notice that I didn't add any of the mould powders at all. You don't actually add the mould powders at the start of this recipe. It's a bit special. So make sure that's well stirred through. Just check the temperature for the final time and then cover and allow it to ripen for 30 minutes at 32 Celsius, 90 Fahrenheit. So once the milk has sufficiently acidified, we're going to start adding the other ingredients. So just give that a quick stir because some of the cream's floated to the top. We're going to add the calcium chloride solution. This helps the curds set a lot better. Add some soluble calcium back into the milk and helps the rennet work a lot better with heat-treated milk like this pasteurized milk. Now, if you're using raw milk, you will not have to use calcium chloride. So next ingredient is the rennet solution. So I'm just pouring that straight in, giving it a good stir, top to bottom for no more than 1 minute. So just mix that through thoroughly. So there we go, no longer than 1 minute. And we're just going to do a final temperature check there, just to make sure it's still at 32. It's crept up a little bit, but that's okay. A couple of degrees is no problem. So just cover that and allow the milk to set for 90 minutes at the target temperature. Now it's very important for this long curd setting time. It helps increase the protein structure of the milk and allows it to hold more moisture. So we're going to check for a clean break now, just to make sure. And after that 90 minutes, you would expect it to be a fairly solid break, which it is. So I didn't have to worry too much about that. Now we're going to go cut the curds into 2 centimetre pieces, which is 3/4 of an inch cubes. Now notice I'm not using my curd harp for this cheese. I'm simply using the knife. The curd harp is a little bit too small. That cuts it into 1/2 inch cubes. So this one we're looking for 3/4 of an inch. So I've just cut the verticals. Now I'm doing the horizontals at a 45 degrees angle. This is a little bit difficult, but this is what you have to do. So this kind of cuts the horizontals for you. So now use a spoon while you're stirring and just move them around, see if there's any really large bits, and then just cut them with the side of the spoon. So we're going to gently stir the curds for 30 minutes. Now, very gently, we're just lifting, separating, and we need this step in here because normally during Camembert you don't have this step. You simply then just scoop out the curds into the moulds. Because this is a blue cheese as well, we need to have the curd structure a little bit smaller than normal, and that it won't compact together. So that's why we're doing this stirring step here. So this also helps the curd to become a little bit firmer, so it has air pockets within the cheese that the blue cheese will then grow veins throughout. So that's after the 30 minutes of stirring. You saw how large the cubes were, and we're going to cover that and allow them to settle for 5 minutes. So after 5 minutes, we're going to dip off the whey now. We're getting rid of about 20 to 25%, roughly down to the level of the curds. So just dipping that off. Now, the reason we're doing this is because we want the curds a little bit drier when they go into the moulds, when we ladle them into the moulds, because this is an essential step, because we're going to be adding the Penicillium Roqueforti mould directly to the curds. So you want it fairly dry and get rid of most of the liquid. So you can reserve that way for making something else later on. So using a ladle, we're just transferring 2.5 centimetres worth of curds, or 1/2 inch from the bottom, into 4 Camembert or blue mould, or blue moulds. Yeah, Camembert or blue cheese moulds. Now they're 10 centimetres across the diameter of the moulds. So you only need about 2 ladles into each mould. Just this initial stage. So once you've got enough that's covering the bottom, then we're going to grab our Penicillium Roqueforti, and we're going to take a pinch, or the smallest spoon you can possibly do. So this is a 1/64 of a teaspoon, and we're going to sprinkle it over the surface of the curds, trying to stay away from the edges. We don't really want any blue mould growth on the outside of the cheese. That's why we're putting the blue mould into the centre. So it's only a really, really small amount of the Penicillium Roqueforti that I'm sprinkling over the curds there. In fact, I didn't even use all the teaspoon. I put some back into the packet. So there's a close-up, and you can see how much that I put on top. It's not very much at all. You can see just a smattering of blue there. So then we just ladle another 2.5 centimetres or 1/2 inches of curds into each mould again. Now the curds don't really wash away the blue mould. It kind of stays in place, which is good. And then we're going to sprinkle the Penicillium Roqueforti over the surface again. So you can see a bit of a pattern forming here. So I'm just gently tapping the side of the spoon so it covers the surface. And once again, keeping away from the edges of the moulds. So then we're going to repeat the process until the curds are all used up. Now this may take a while because you will have a fair bit of curds in there. So I'm just using 2 scoops for each mould and then sprinkle. And then once again, as you can see there. So lots of sprinkling going on and then re-topping it up until all of the curds have gone. So the curds do shrink as you are going along, as more whey is expelled out of the cheese. So that's the finishing touches. And as you can see there are the moulds that are fully filled with all the curds that I had in the pot. Now, you may get a bit of a rise on the top. You may get a little bit too much, but it does shrink down as we go along. So once the curds have settled down to about the surface of the level of the mould itself, we're going to place a mat on top and a board on top and then flip them over. So notice I've got a board in the bottom, I've got a bamboo mat there, a little bit messy because that's where it was draining, but that's okay. Trying to figure out which one to use, seeing how slippy it is, whether I need to use the bamboo mat. Yes, I do. Good decision, Gavin. Okay, so pop the moulds then on top of the bamboo mat, even though they're not open-ended at the bottom. It just, it's a bit of a non-skid mat, which really works well. Then we put the bamboo mat over the top. This helps with drainage once we've flipped it over. Put another board on top and then clamp them together really tightly and then flip, and hopefully nothing shoots out the sides. A little bit delicate. I have seen people get 2 boards and actually put bolts on either ends and tighten them up for flipping. Now they should drop down under their own weight. I'm going to flip these cheeses every 2 hours for about 6 times. So it's about 12 hours worth of flipping. It does take a long time for the curds to settle down. So this is 2 hours later. And we're going to flip these over again. Just put the boards on top again. Squeeze together once you got them level. That board looks a bit wonky. Flip it over, makes it a bit better. So really good tight squeeze and then just turn them over. There we go. And they should settle down all by themselves. As you can see, they've started to shrink down already. Can you get any fluff off if there's any fluff there? So looking good so far. And that's the rind has formed from the initial first flip. Looks pretty good. Don't worry about so much about the lines. They will go away as the cheese ages. Okay, so every 2 hours, as I mentioned, we're flipping these cheeses over. Same method, boards on top, mat on top, and then flip her over. And they just drop down under their own gravity. And again, as you can see, so the cheese has shrunk some more. If they don't go all the way down the bottom, just give them a little bit of a bang. Seems to work all right. Now, after about 6 flips of the cheese, they'll be firm enough that you'll be able to turn them by hand, and you won't need the boards anymore. And you can see they just settle down by themselves. So the next morning, the cheese should be about half to a third of the size that it was originally. Now, once it is, and it feels fairly firm in your hand, it's now time to salt. So this is day 2 of the cheese making session. So all I did is just put them on a board and then top each round with half a teaspoon of salt. Just sprinkle that over the surface of each cheese. So this is actually called dry salting. And we just give it a little bit of a rub. Just checking my instructions there. A little bit of a rub. Pop it out. Salt over the top. Pop it back in again. There we go. Nice and easy. Now, during this process, I did flip the cheese before I put the salt on top as well. And just cover them back up. Keep any beasties off. Now, 6 hours later, we're going to flip each cheese. And we're going to salt the other side. So with half a teaspoon of salt again, and then pop it back in the mould again. And do that with the rest of the cheeses. Now, if you don't think you got full coverage, then just give the salt a little bit of a rub. Sometimes you don't need to if you've managed to get it all over the top of the cheese. We're going to leave it overnight now to rest again. So this is day 3, and we're going to remove the cheese from the moulds and transfer them to the ripening box for drying. And then we're going to dry at room temperature. So I'm just going to take them out of the moulds and pop them into sanitized ripening boxes. Just put some vinegar on my hands there, just to keep any yeasts or moulds off of my hands. Okay, and dry them off on a clean tea towel. Or vinegar. This bloke loves vinegar. Anyway, just take them out of the moulds, pop them straight in there. Once they're air dry, then you can transfer them to a cheese fridge at 13 degrees Celsius, 55 Fahrenheit for 2 days only. So they'll air dry in about a day. So after the 2 days, you'll see a little bit of blue mould has started to grow. Just a little bit on the outside. You really don't want too much blue on the outside. So we're going to pierce about 20 holes in each cheese to allow the blue mould to grow on the inside. Now, remembering we put the blue mould on the inside to start with, so it should work fairly well. So once you've done one side, flip it over, do the other side. Trying to create passages for oxygen to go into the cheese because the Penicillium Roqueforti needs oxygen to develop. So hopefully, by stirring the curds earlier on in the process, we've created some little pockets of air within the cheese, and that will create marbling within it. So once you've done 2, do the next 2. I'm just using the probe from a dairy thermometer. Some people have been known to use small drill bits, because when they put that into the, and have them sanitized, of course, when they drill into it, the excess cheese comes out and creates a nice channel for the blue mould to grow into. I find that this dairy thermometer works well anyway. So we're going to transfer it back into the cheese fridge at 13 Celsius, 55 Fahrenheit for another 2 days. And you can see that's the blue mould after I've just pierced it. So after that 2 days, we're going to mix a 1/4 teaspoon of salt into 120 millilitres or 4 ounces of water. and add 1/8 of a teaspoon of Penicillium Candidum and 1/32 of a teaspoon of Geotrichum Candidum, and put it into a little spray bottle. You notice I got a spray bottle there. And just make sure it's all dissolved well. Looks fairly dissolved, and then pour it into the spray bottle. Now you can leave this overnight to rehydrate. I might have made a mistake here by not allowing it to rehydrate overnight. However, I went straight ahead and sprayed the surface of 2 of the cheeses with the Penicillium Candidum and Geotrichum Candidum mixture. A bit close up there. So just lightly spray all over. Don't make it too wet. Just lightly spray. That's it. And hopefully the cheeses, oh, a little bit more. Gets a bit excited, this bloke. We're just making sure that we get some white mould growth on the outside. Now I chose not to do the other 2 because I want some blue cheeses. Now we're going to allow it to surface dry for 2 hours with the lids off before returning it back to the cheese fridge at 13 Celsius 55 Fahrenheit at 95% relative humidity. Don't forget to turn daily as the white mould starts to grow. So this is after 2 weeks. These are my unsprayed blues, and these are the sprayed whites. Not much white mould growth. There is some, but not as much as I would expect. Now, when yours are covered in white mould, then wrap in micro-perforated paper and then store at 4 degrees Celsius or 39 Fahrenheit for another 4 weeks. So an interesting process, as you can see. I'm going to leave 2 of these CamBlues just to be blues because I want to see what it tastes like, because the milk is very creamy. We saw the extra cream that I added to the milk. So I think that'll be fairly interesting to see what sort of blue cheese they're going to turn into. And I'm just going to spray 2 of the 4 wheels that I made. Hence, 2 of them will be CamBlue and 1 will just be a creamy blue. So don't forget that you can buy kits over at littlegreenworkshops.com.au, and that the show is supported by you, the patron, either via YouTube memberships or via Patreon. The links are in the description below. Well, thanks for watching again, and we'll see you next time.